Thanks so much, John, and I really appreciate that. Hello to everyone online. It's a shame I can't be down there. I've never been to South Carolina. I really do wish to come down there next year, so hopefully I can do some high fives, fist bumps, and shaking some hands, and maybe share a beer or two. Now, as John rightly said, I'm a futurist. I'm originally from England, moved to Canada 12 years ago. Used to live in Vancouver on the west coast. Now I live in the very chilly Toronto. Right now there's snow outside on the ground and the sun is shining, so life is pretty good up here. And this presentation helps us look out 5, 10, even further into the future. This presentation I'm calling the Berg 2030, a vision of an incredible and equitable Spartanburg. So this is a presentation where I really do encourage you to pay attention. There's going to be a post-keynote report that we're going to share after this, and there'll be a video of this as well. But if you have questions as we go through, please do share them in the chat, and John will be able to quarterback that, and we'll have a good, lively discussion at the end of this. When I get into talking about the future with clients, I always talk about how we shift from strategic thinking today, what we deal with on a daily basis, the next 3 months, 18 months, and what we have to really put into place to keep, the lights on and a community like Spartanburg really rocking. But now I like to say, hey, start challenging yourself by being more creative and thinking about the future. Shift that mindset from what is to what if. And this has been a huge revelation for a lot of my clients, because if suddenly there's some disbelief on what might be coming, then we can say, suspend that disbelief and really start to push out your thinking and ask yourself, what if? What if the future is different? What if 2030, the world looks completely differently? And how does that affect our strategic thinking today? Now, I like to really ground us in where we came from, the industrial revolutions. 270 years ago, we had a massive revolution across 3 dimensions. They were the dimensions of communications, transportation, and energy. And looking at the history of Spartanburg, we can really see that it was one of the real the powerhouses in the beginnings and in the middle of that industrial revolution, with being such an important hub. Spartanburg's known as the hub city as well. Well, today we're in the 4th industrial revolution. The world is completely connected by the internet, mobile, and new ways of communications. Exponential change is happening faster than before. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to talk about things that I call the signals of change. These are things that I'm seeing today that are fundamentally going to change how the world is going to operate, and will have a direct effect on how Spartanburg looks, feels, and operates in the future. But really, we have to dial back and say, okay, 2020 has been a really tough year. It's taken a pandemic to realize that this industrial revolution that we've had has really affected us across a whole number of different dimensions. Everything from food and transportation, food supply, schooling, democracy, globalization, and so much more. The industrial complex has been failing. It's incredibly fragile. It's been a reminder that these systems that we put so much faith in still need a lot of work and a lot of attention. And there needs to be some shifts in how we operate. This presentation is going to go through 4 key areas. We're going to look at retail, we're going to look at food, we're going to look at mobility, we're going to look at energy as well. And normally I spend about an hour to an hour and a half in person with clients. So we're going to go through these pretty quickly. Again, there's going to be a post-keynote report that you're going to be able to find really useful. That's going to have reference points, so you can jump into all of the references that I've been using and read more about these areas. Let's look at retail. We know that the lifeblood of any modern city is the high street and these areas where retail congregates. It's a place for community. It's a place for togetherness. It's a place for economic thriving as well. But really, the biggest development, I think, in retail of the last 30, 40 years has been the use of cellular and mobile phone technology and smartphones. The majority of people that are on this call are probably looking down at their smartphones right now and trying to multitask and do multiple things. But what's quite interesting is, during the pandemic alone, over 1.6 trillion hours have been spent on mobile. So if you're not in mobile, you're kind of missing a trick. And this is sort of a call to everyone that's a business person in Spartanburg, whether you're retail or any other business. You have to be operating in that realm. What's interesting is that e-commerce is a massive driving force. So yes, you may have a physical space, but you've got to be online, you've got to be on mobile. By 2024, they're saying that revenue for online sales in the US alone is $476 billion. It's growing and growing exponentially year by year. And we've just had Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and these have been record results for everyone that's been operating online. But what's really quite strange, and this is a statistic I've been looking into, is that 50% of small businesses in the US don't even have a website. So as Spartanburg looks to 2030, we got to kind of look at what we need to do today and really establish ourselves online and have that thriving and beating pulse of the city in a digital form. Now, coming back to physical retail, if we're going to bring people into our stores, we're going to have to provide more than just shelves of goods. We're going to have to provide experiences. And the youth of today, the Gen Zs, are going to be looking for everything from social aspects to personal shopping services. What about spa services, coffee bars, multidisciplinary physical spaces. One of my favorite store concepts over the past 10 years was something called Story, and this was out of New York City. Story operates as a store, but operates and is curated like a magazine. So every 8 to 12 weeks, it completely changes what's inside. It partners with brands and it creates completely new experiences. Why can't we think about our retail stores as experiences so we can draw people back? And it's more about just buying goods, it's about creating community. Beyond that, we're seeing huge shifts away from buying new goods into buying second-hand goods. We've seen websites like Etsy absolutely explode during the time of the pandemic. And also we've seen the second-hand resale marketplace really come into the forefront of thinking for a lot of people. In fact, there's this store, Round 2. It's based out of LA and it's got stores all over the world now. And Sean Wotherspoon, the leader of this, he consults into Nike, and he's really defining even the new apparel game as well as the second-hand resale apparel game. But what's fascinating about resale and the resale of goods, it's transcending what a thrift store is, and it's going into something that's really directly challenging the new apparel market. So over the next 4 years, it's going to grow exponentially. The top bar here in this graph is showing that we're going to grow from a $7 billion market in resale to a $36 billion market in resale. That's a significant amount more than the new apparel market. So these kinds of changes are cultural. These kinds of changes are coming from the kids, and we need to listen to them a lot more about what's coming. But this is something that's seeping into our culture and changing. Vintage goods and a new way of looking at the curation of experiences in retail is going to really shape what Spartanburg looks like in the next 10 years. But there's also the consideration of the big players like Amazon and big tech and how they're thinking of completely redefining how retail operates. Now, the Amazon Go store opened a couple of years ago in Seattle. It's a fully autonomous store, and they bought Whole Foods. So you can expect this kind of technology. I'm just about to show you a video of starting to roll out in a lot of big box stores around the United States.
4 years ago, we started to wonder, what would shopping look like if you could walk into a store, grab what you want, and just go? What if we could weave the most advanced machine learning, computer vision, and AI into the very fabric of a store so you never have to wait in line? No lines, no checkouts, no registers. Welcome to Amazon Go. Use the Amazon Go app to enter. Then put away your phone and start shopping. It's really that simple. Take whatever you like. Anything you pick up is automatically added to your virtual cart. If you change your mind about that cupcake, just put it back. Our technology will update your virtual cart automatically. So, how does it work? We used computer vision, deep learning algorithms, and sensor fusion, much like you'd find in self-driving cars. We call it Just Walk Out technology. Once you've got everything you want, you can just go. When you leave, our Just Walk Out technology adds up your virtual cart and charges your Amazon account. Your receipt is sent straight to the app, and you can keep going. Amazon Go. No lines, no checkout. No, seriously.
So Amazon Go is an incredibly interesting concept. It's a concept where we can walk in, we can take what we want, and we can leave. It's going to harvest the data from our online purchases and our offline purchases and create that circular big data economy. And these big box retailers are going to start implementing this, as well as starting to see Amazon pushing into the grocery market as well. But really, this is when I need to start asking, what if? What do we think as retail as an experience beyond shopping? What if we push back on the big box stores and develop local and get those people online and get that working from an e-commerce perspective and to create those experiences? And what if automation replaces that human element? How does that really fit into things? Okay, let's move on to food and look at the food centers around us. We've seen a huge rethinking about the provision of food and logistics around this. And now Noma is a restaurant out in Copenhagen in Denmark. It's the world's best restaurant. So what do you do in the time of the pandemic when you can't sit down to a 12-course incredible meal? Well, what you do is you just pin it back and you provide one burger that's meat and one burger that's a quinoa burger that's vegetarian. You provide beer and you create queues around the block for 3 hours at a time, and you completely reconsider how the world operates. So this is the flexibility and the and this resiliency that we need to see in the operation of food outlets. What's also interesting is we're starting to see, just slightly out of the downtown core, we're seeing a big race for building much more extensive infrastructure around drive-thrus. We've got people like Chipotle and others really stepping into forward that have never really thought about drive-thrus. And there's a huge investment, $290 billion plus dollars is being invested in everything from like mobile ordering only lanes to other kinds of ways of getting the food in a convenient way. And then one big revolution that's coming as well to provide that resiliency and flexibility is around ghost kitchens. And Travis Kalanick, the guy behind Uber, has moved on, and now he's running a company called Cloud Kitchens. They've had $400 million in investment and a multi-billion-dollar market pricing against them. And now what they provide is a center for people to walk in and to think up new restaurant ideas without actually having to have a restaurant storefront. And then we can think about growing our food locally, even in the downtown core. There's a company called Square Roots that's using shipping containers that allows entrepreneurs to grow microgreens and provide them to restaurants. And I think that these wild and new ideas are really going to start to permeate our thinking when it comes to urban planning and food supply. Okay, let's look at mobility and let's look at mode shifts. And we know that there's lots of different ways to get around, everything from taxi to public transportation to your own vehicles, even cycling and e-scooters. Now, there are companies that are starting to rethink how this all operates. And a company called Whim out of Scandinavia is starting to bring this all together. So what you do for a subscription on a monthly basis, you have access to all public transportation, all taxis, all different kinds of services like e-scooters as well. So the coming together in platforms of mobility solutions is something that's going to become prevalent as well in our modern world. Beyond that, I think that we're moving to a world that's electric. Now, I know that we've obviously got BMW very close to the hearts of everyone in Spartanburg. Well, the X Series is going to become electric, and this is advice I actually gave to BMW themselves a couple of years ago. And we're going to see that this actually change. Up here in Ontario, Canada, we're just seeing huge plants by Ford completely retooled to provide electric vehicles. And I think that this is going to be an absolute future that's coming. I personally drive an electric vehicle. If you've ever driven one, you realize that it's the absolute future. It just drives better than a normal combustion engine vehicle, and it's cheaper to own as well. And then we've got autonomous transportation. Things like the Trapeze are providing fully autonomous buses for downtown cores and business parks and science parks as well. And it's really interesting to see this technology step up. And from a wider logistics perspective, we've got people like DB Schenker and Enride putting together solutions for fully autonomous trucking. There's no one driving, and it just goes from A to B, and it makes a lot of sense to keep this infrastructure running 24/7, 365 in a way that makes the world operate in a much more fast and fluid way. But then it gets super interesting. As a futurist, people always say to me, where's the flying cars, Nick? Well, the flying cars are kind of here. They're not exactly cars per se, but autonomous flying vehicles are certainly coming. Things like Volocopter are coming up with new models of Volocity, where you actually see cities, people being able to take these autonomous vehicles from one side to the next. Incredibly powerful in places like New York City, where you might be going from downtown Manhattan to LaGuardia or to JFK, which is a particularly painful taxi or an Uber ride as well. And the markets are bullish on this. I don't quite know where they got this number from, but I like to pull it up anyway. But Morgan Stanley's saying that the market for autonomous flying vehicles by the year 2040 is going to be $1.5 trillion. So is there a new kind of way of getting around? Yes. Will it become absolutely prevalent in places like Spartanburg? Well, I think we'll start to see it. Will it become more prevalent in very large cities? Absolutely it will. But autonomous vehicles and the way of operating logistics and mobility around cities is becoming more autonomous by the use of machine learning, artificial intelligence. And I just want to show you this video that goes through a few of these methods. Okay, flying Amazon drone ships, really? Is that the future? Well, that last piece of the video was actually CGI. What's really interesting, though, is that Amazon's actually got patents out for that exact purpose. Are we going to see blimps flying over America with drones autonomously delivering goods? I would absolutely put money on that in the next sort of 5 to 10 years. It's an incredible future that we're headed towards. And these dirigibles that are going to be flying around are going to be part of that as well. But what if electric drivetrains become standard? What if that changes, every vehicle that we drive and we travel in? What if transportation as a service is the choice for the under 40s, and then that bleeds into the older generations as well? What if autonomous everything takes off? Some say that it's not a case of when an industry will become fully autonomous. It's a case of when. So things are coming to change, but I truly believe that the future is about human and the machine. So we have to work together. And it's going to make us hugely productive, and it's going to be good for society. Okay, let's look at resilient futures. Let's look at energy and how we can be powering Spartanburg and the United States as a whole. There's a big discussion about renewables versus fossil fuels and the destruction of the energy business. Well, change is coming. The price of everything from solar to wind to battery for storage when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining is just dropping in price exponentially over time. Now, I truly believe that we're going to start shifting towards massive infrastructure changes in so many different ways, from a residential to a business perspective. And Tesla has really sort of pioneered this. So Tesla isn't a car company, it's an energy company, and its solutions across the board think about energy as a whole. And its solar roof has been installed in over 400,000 homes across the United States. It costs the same as a brand new roof. If you're building a new home, you might as well put one of these in. You could ultimately have no costs from generating the electricity you need to use in your home. And in some places where they've adjusted policy, you can put that energy back into the grid and even get paid for that. And this is a trend that's coming into business as well. And we've seen many big box retailers and stores starting to go towards solar and renewable energy as well. IKEA, Kohl's, Costco, Whole Foods, Walmart and Target. So I think that small business can also look at the investment. And I think that this is about support for small businesses to invest in off-grid technologies. Because when the sun's shining and the wind's blowing, then there's an opportunity to really have independent power. There's another big shift in the world, and I talk about this a lot. It's the circular economy. The idea that we can reduce, reuse and recycle the waste that we produce. We can bring that into society. We've already spoken about the resale stores that are taking over the apparel side of retail. Well, that's part of the circular economy. We need to really rethink how we operate, and there's up to $2 trillion in benefits of increased business and reduced waste and new ways of working and new opportunities realized by operating in a circular economy going forward. Check out a resource called the Ellen MacArthur Foundation online. I've done some talks with them. Incredibly powerful organization for giving the information to the world about what the circular economy could be doing. So what if we create an off-grid city strategy from business to home? Can Spartanburg be part of that new future? What if we work to reduce, reuse and recycle our waste products from businesses to homes as well? Well, we're going to create a much better world and a zero waste city potentially. Okay, as a futurist, I practice strategic foresight. I sit down with my clients, and what we've seen today is part of this process. It's research and looking at the signals of change, the things that are starting to indicate today that there's investment for change in the world. And the strategic foresight that I undertake follows a particular framework. My framework is called the Foresight Development Framework, and it likes to really weave in with what your strategic thinking today. I ground ourselves in principles around let's put humanity ahead of technology. Let's not lead with solutions that force humans to change. Let's look at the human desires and the human insights that's going to shape the new world. Let's look at plurality, inclusion and equity. Realize that there's multiple futures for everyone, not just one vision that everyone has to adhere to. And let's look at scientific fact. Let's be creative about the application of that. Then find the signals of change. And after this presentation, go out and you'll see the world slightly differently. Go online and look at everything from the future of mobility, the future of retail, and really go into being a constant researcher of the future of the world. And then what I do is I build what-if scenarios. I write short stories and speculative fiction, and I consider things across financial, organizational, regulatory, cultural, environmental, political, technological, social dimensions. And then I wonder what initiatives exist in 5, 10, 20 years, and I draw maps between all of these and how they work. What's fascinating about that is it's a framework to help you shift your mindset from what is to what if. And that creativity and that ability to look to a future is really interesting for me. When I was sat down thinking about Spartanburg and what it could be in 2030, I had the resources online, I had conversations with people, I chatted to my colleague Glenn Heemstra that had been down there a number of times, that referred me to the team over here at One Spartanburg, and I really started to wonder, what if Spartanburg could be completely different in how it operates? It's going to quite frankly look the same. It's just going to operate a little bit differently, but it could operate in a way that's more equitable, cleaner, greener, and actually more powerful for its residents and its businesses as well. And I'd like to invite people to submit questions, and over to you, John. I'd like to have a good Q&A session as well. Thank you very much.